before Brad goes, I'm going to say, and don't hold me to this, of course, I'll have my prediction that week. I'll say Miami wins this game. It is on the road, tough environment, and this is before this team and this crowd's going to get beaten down by playing LSU and Alabama and Georgia and everybody else week after week after week. So they're going to be excited. I'm going to say 27-20 Canes.
27-20 Canes. All right. For me, the Florida Miami game is a rivalry that if you've never been a part of, you definitely have to. And if you've never been in Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, I suggest you make the trip August 31st, because if you've gone to the Texas A&M game a couple years back at Texas A&M, which I was there. If you went to the Virginia Tech Notre Dame games in 2017, when those were memorable, how loud they were. This is going to be that type of environment. It's going to be hostile. It's not going to be a fan base that are going to greet you before and after the game, even if you win or lose. It's not going to be a stadium where you're going to be able to walk into and be able to talk to someone to your left and right and be able to hear them. It's going to be loud. The way the structure is built in that stadium, all the fans are literally on top of each other. It's built like a high school stadium. It's got bleachers everywhere, and it's loud. The great thing is we have a quarterback that is used to that environment, that has been in that environment. We have a quarterback in Cam Ward that has beaten Graham Mertz, the starting quarterback at Florida, and DJ Ukulele, the quarterback at Florida State. He has beaten both of those guys in his college career. So you have that going for you. But the only thing you don't have going for you is, history. And history shows that Florida currently has the longest FBS home opening winning streak in college football, which I believe is 34 or 35 games, right? And they are a team that starts out fast and then gets mollywopped all throughout the year. But this is the beginning of the year, so I expect a close game. But I got my Canes. I'm going to say 24-17, the University of Miami.
Good pick. 7-point spread. Sounds familiar. I think we're on the same page between Brad and myself. That you got your work cut out for you this year, George. I don't know what they're going to do about that situation. And I know, Brad, you've touched upon Florida and you're already starting to scout them a little bit. You gave us a nice little synopsis on the offensive line there, but they had a great recruiting class leading into December last year, top 3, top 4. It still was a good one at about number 11. Looks like they're shaping up for a similar run. I just don't know what they're going to do if they go. They could be the best 5-7 team in the history of college football if they win 5 games. I just don't know if they will. 4 or 5 wins, maybe. And let's say Billy Napier's primed for a top 10 class, and we're 2 weeks away from National Signing Day after the season's over. I don't know if they're going to put that much stock in that recruiting class to say 3 losing seasons in a row. We're going to give him a 4th year just because he's bringing in some players, or if they're just going to say enough's enough.
Well, I will say this, Mark. Florida, unfortunately, they're kind of handcuffed and they're in a pickle, right? For a lot of people that aren't aware, it kind of starts with the athletic director, right? I think as Miami fans, we kind of know how this feels, because when we had Blake James and Manny Diaz here, we felt handcuffed a lot too. In order to get changes made in the football realm, we think it would have to go through our head coach, but unfortunately, it went through the athletic director and Blake James. Well, it's kind of the same thing that's happening at Florida. Their athletic director, Scott Strickland, is really handcuffing the department of the football team, because Billy Napier is his right hand guy. And if you really look at the monies, the numbers when it comes from a financial standpoint, if you were to fire Billy Napier before the season started, it would cost you $8 million just to fire him. So then you look into this football season, and you brought up a great point about recruitment, how they start out fast, and then once the season starts, it starts to tremble, and then they fall apart. Well, what's going to happen week 4, week 5, when Florida is maybe 2-2, 2-3? Do you pull the plug then, or do you wait till the season's over? Because if you wait till the season's over, now you're starting all over again, not only for your football team, but now what's going to happen with recruitment? What's going to happen with current guys on your football team? What's going to happen with all the relationships you built all throughout this football season? That's going to be more of a tricky question for Florida. And if I'm a Florida fan, I'm hoping Billy does good, because if not, you're going to have to hit the reset button another 2 to 3 years, unfortunately. So you're going to want Billy to do good just because from a money aspect, there's just a lot of money invested in a Billy Napier. And like I said before, the puppet and all this is the athletic director. So in my personal opinion, especially Florida fans that are watching this, they could probably agree with me. It all starts with Strickland. Until Strickland's gone, I don't see Florida football progressing anytime soon. He's the athletic director that hasn't really made the best decisions, not only in football but in a lot of other realms of sports when it comes to hires at the University of Florida. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do as a whole, not just football.
If I'm not mistaken, Strickland was at Mississippi State
He
before
was. He was the
Florida.
one that brought
Yeah.
Dan Mullen.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. And the other aspect in this, if Billy Napier is let go, is I'm sure there's going to be an internal struggle over, do we go after, do we have to bring in somebody that's going to make a huge splash that people are just going to jaw drop over the big hire, or are we smart enough and do we have the hiring practice in place that we can spot a guy that people aren't going to ooh and ah over, but he's a young guy, up and coming, smart, go getter, that is going to be somebody that can build something? But or are they going to feel the pressure to have to wow people with a hire?
Yeah, unfortunately with Florida, I mean, Florida is one of those programs where, I mean, any coach in the country, I mean, you shouldn't turn down a Florida job. I mean, that's one of the top coaching jobs you could get in the country. A lot of it has to do with this the foundation of money that's behind it. You don't have to worry about from a money standpoint that once you are the coach, pretty much you have everything, all the intangibles that you need. They will give you just that. They have a lot of things in place that a lot of other universities still don't have yet. But again, you got to a lot of this stuff goes into politics too. You know, as we know at UM and other universities, there's a lot of politics that go in behind the scenes on who is the guy to make the hire. But me personally, I think some of the more interesting guys that, in my personal opinion, that would scare me as an opposing fan, um, those guys that would be head coaches for Florida, I don't think would ever happen just because of from a politics standpoint. If I had to think of names off the top of my head, I think guys like Deion Sanders and Lane Kiffin are two at the top of my head that if they were at the University of Florida, I mean, that would be very scary from not only a recruitment aspect, but just what they bring to the table as far as being exciting. I think a lot that has to do with Florida right now is not just from a recruiting aspect, but just from a media aspect. Nobody believes in Florida. Nobody believes in Billy Napier. When you look at what all the coaching changes and all the coaching hires he has done in the last 2 years and just in the last 6 months, I don't think there's a program in college football that's had so many coaching moves more than Florida. Anytime they hire a guy, whether it's at a coordinator position, at a assistant position, or just someone they bring in off field, within a month, within 3 months, they're already leaving for other jobs. A lot of times it's better opportunities, so that's a good thing. But then in other times, they're just moving for lateral positions. From the outside looking in, that's not a good look. That tells me that no one believes in what Billy's trying to do. So it's really important for Billy and this football program to really adapt some wins this year. But I really don't see it.
And Brad, when you talk about politics playing a role, are you talking about a hire like Lane Kiffin or Deion Sanders, that they're not conservative enough? And I'm not talking about politically. I'm talking about
Correct.
they're
The
too
boosters.
out there. They push the envelope. They're a little bit too out there, that they don't want somebody like that. A lot of the movers and shakers at Florida.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
the boosters, that the guys that are putting the money in for the program. I think there's some speculation with those type of guys. They want someone that's a little bit more clean cut. Um, and again, these type of things, it's not just hurting their head coaching hires. It's also hurting the NIL department. We know NIL is very important right now in college football, and UF is one of those schools that haven't really been doing a very good job at that.
Yep. And just here in the last few weeks, of course, with the rulings in Tennessee and Virginia, the dogs have been called off heading toward Tennessee, Miami, Florida State, and some other locales because, hey, regardless of whether you like where college football is going, freedom of movement, freedom of choice, all those things are American rights for all of us. So we're in a good place when it comes to that. I understand it's chaos, the wild wild west. I don't particularly like it either because it's just so crazy. But I do not want to limit what these uh, student athletes have the opportunity to do. They should be able to have the same opportunities the rest of us have to make money and to choose where uh, they pursue their careers.
No, absolutely.
Brad, thank you so much for being here. Everybody, canesinsight.com. And Brad, if there's anything else that you want to point out, certainly you've got the floor.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you for having me, man. As always, I got to start doing this more often, talking some Canes football with you. It's always a pleasure to talk on this platform. And yeah, man, I appreciate everything. And before I go, just make sure you check out canesinside.com. We got the top forum in the country, man. It's continuously updating by the minute, by the second. And just want to drop some recruit names for any of the Miami fans that are watching to keep a lookout for. You got Cortez Mills, Amari Wallace, Chris Ewald, Bryce Fitzgerald, and a few other guys. But just off the top, those are some names to watch out for in the next couple months as Miami Hurricane fans as we start to trend towards recruitment. Mario Cristobal is going to start putting these loafers on very soon and taking some names from guys. So it's a pleasure always talking Canes football with you, Mark.